What's up guys? Today I wanted to take a break from makeup and talk for a second about hair. I've had long hair for most of my life with the exception of 2 incidents. When I was in my early 20s, I decided that I needed to be fire engine red for several years, and then eventually my hair started breaking off and getting shorter and shorter, and I had to cut it around shoulder length. It was really tragic. I felt pretty horrible about it at the time, and I went through a lot to try to grow it back quickly. At the time, I was like super insecure about everything else about myself other than my hair. So my hair being taken away from me was like a security blanket for me being taken, like, do you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? The second time that I had shoulder length hair was about 1.5 years ago, and I actually decided that I needed to take away that security blanket to feel comfortable with all the other parts of me, like by choice. But long story short, I cut it to my shoulders. I actually really liked the way it looked, but it didn't feel like me. Like, I felt good and I felt like I looked good and I wasn't insecure, and that was great. But I did want to grow it back because I just didn't feel like I looked like myself. A few years ago, before I cut my hair to shoulder length, I actually wrote one of my most popular blog posts of all time, which was titled How to Grow Long Healthy Hair or Strong Healthy Hair. I don't remember which, but I'll link it down below. A lot of these tips are included in there, but I've actually learned more the second time around a little bit too, and there were new things that weren't available back then, so I want to touch on those. So I'm going to give you my top 5 tips for growing out your hair and keeping it as long and healthy as possible. Tip number 1, when you're in the process of growing out your hair, make sure that you make all of your color decisions based on the health of your hair. Things like bleach and like permanent colors, things that use like a high volume peroxide to lift the color of your hair and then deposit color, things of that nature obviously damage your hair the most. Things like Manic Panic, Pravana, that only deposit color, are very little damage, if no damage whatsoever. But the problem is if you don't have naturally blonde hair, those actually need bleach, and the bleach damages. All of this rambling, what I'm trying to say basically is that if you want to change your hair color, but you're also trying to grow out your hair, take into consideration the amount of damage you'll be doing to the hair, as well as the upkeep and what kind of damage that will be doing to the hair when you make that decision, because that can absolutely 100% make or break the health of your hair. If you do decide to color your hair when you're trying to grow it out, I highly recommend using Olaplex treatment. I went against my own rule and I wound up trying to bleach my hair and do like silver tips sometime last year. It turned out a complete fucking disaster, and I wound up dyeing my hair super dark over top of it to cover up what we had done because it was that bad. Normally that would have absolutely killed my hair because we bleached it twice, then put deposit only color on it twice, and then covered it up with semi-permanent color, like all in within 48 hours. Normally that would absolutely destroy your hair. I used Olaplex and I have to be honest, it barely made any difference in the health of my hair. My hair was almost entirely unscathed, which if you have done a lot of dyeing to your hair, you know is an absolute miracle. So if you do decide to dye your hair while you're trying to do the growing out process, I highly recommend that you have your hairdresser use Olaplex. If they don't have it, I think that you can order it and have it sent to your salon. All they have to do is like mix it in with the color. It's like not even a big deal. Highly recommend using Olaplex to keep the hair healthy during the bleaching process. Tip number 2. Obviously the theme here is keeping your hair healthy so that it grows out without breakage. The fastest way to break your hair is to flat iron it while it's still damp. I know that sometimes there is like a huge time crunch and you're like, ooh, it's like a little bit damp in certain spots and let me just, you know, go over the rest of it and that part just won't hold as well. Same thing goes with your curling iron as well. You might feel like, oh, you know, like my curl just won't hold as well, but let me just get it done while it's still a little bit damp underneath and stuff. That is a terrible idea. Basically, when you do that, the heat from the tool boils the water inside the shaft of the hair and just completely destroys the cuticle of it. So it's like literally a recipe for instant breakage. Tip 3. I said this in my original blog post, and I will reiterate it again because even all of these years later, I still stand by this tip. Always use a sulfate-free shampoo and never buy super duper cheap shampoo. When I was younger, I used to only buy the like 79-cent or 99-cent VO5 shampoo and conditioner from the drugstore because I didn't think it made any difference. And once I started using better shampoo and conditioner, specifically sulfate-free shampoos, it made a world of difference in the health of my hair. Another thing that a hairdresser pointed out to me, if you look at the ingredients on really cheap shampoo with sulfates in it and you compare it to the ingredients in dish soap, they're almost identical. Like, what? That's crazy. Just don't put that in your hair. Okay, we had some small technical difficulties, and by small technical difficulties, I mean that I thought that I was filming tips 4 and 5 and I never filmed them, and then I sat down to edit this and then I realized they weren't there. So it's a week later, pretty much. Outfit change, makeup change, no big deal. Tip 4, never brush your hair from the roots down. And I know that that's like a little bit confusing to like make a visual note of, so I'm going to demonstrate for you what I mean. A lot of times when people brush their hair, they'll just stick the brush in the top of their hair and start pulling downward on it. That is not the ideal way to brush your hair, and that can actually cause a lot more breakage than brushing it the proper way. Because what happens is when you start here, you're pushing all of the knots that are in your hair from here all the way to the end together and condensing them into like one big super knot, and then you have to kind of rip through that when you get to the end. The proper way to do it, start at the end and then brush a little and then move up, brush a little more until you get all the way to the top. That way, if there are any knots in your hair, you will get them out, but you're not compounding them together and then getting through all of it and causing damage at the end afterward. It may seem like a small thing, but if you employ the proper method every time you brush your hair, over time it makes a very big impact on the amount of breakage that you have on your hair, and it can help you grow it out much faster. Tip 5. Don't cut your hair on a schedule. Cut your hair when you need it. And this is the most controversial tip that I gave in my long form blog post about this. I had a lot of people come on there and leave me lovely, friendly, and not at all nasty comments saying that I don't know what I'm talking about, and that if you ask any hairdresser, they'll tell you that you need to get trimmed every 6 weeks, blah, blah, blah. To that, I say, not only does that not make sense mathematically, and I'm going to break that down for you in a moment, I have asked many hairdressers and most of them agree with me. So on average, human hair grows 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch every 4 to 6 weeks. So that means if you go to get a haircut every 6 weeks, even if they're only taking off 1/4 inch, there's a good chance they're taking off the entirety of the growth that you've gained since the last time you went for a haircut. However, if you don't have breakage, you don't need to cut it off. The reason that cutting your hair makes your hair grow more quickly is basically just that you're cutting off the dead ends where it would be breaking and splitting, so therefore you don't have to cut as much off the next time when you get it cut and then lose that much hair. But if you have little to no breakage at all, there's no reason why you have to do it every 6 weeks religiously. What you should be doing if you are trying to grow your hair out is assessing the quality of your hair carefully, being honest with yourself, saying, okay, I do have a little breakage, I do need a haircut, or no, my ends look really legit and I could go a little bit longer. So that way you are not just cutting the growth off that you've worked so hard for just for the hell of it. You are only doing it when you need to. Essentially, do all of the tips that we discussed up until now so that your hair is healthier and you need haircuts less often. And that's where all of these tips come together in a beautiful tip sandwich. So those are my 5 tips for growing your hair out long and healthy and strong. I'm not a hairdresser, But to be fair, I was raised by one, so I do have a good base of knowledge about hair. These tips might not be 100% applicable to everyone. However, I have found over the years that they are extremely helpful if you do all of these things, plus all of the things that I will link below in the long blog post about it. You're gonna have an easier time growing your hair out. I am fairly confident in that. So give that post a read. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thank you guys very much for watching as always. Please subscribe if you have not already. If you want to keep up with me on social media, I am at Miss QuinnFace on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. I am a goofball and a makeup doer over there on those platforms. And I love chatting with people on Twitter about things, so hit me up over there if you have anything to say, unless you want to say nasty things, in which case don't do that maybe. As always, everything will be linked down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. I actually wrote probably one of my most popular